What's up, Broncos country? Are you ready to hear something you never imagined would happen? Pat Surtain, too, our monster cornerback, the guy who won the Defensive Player of the Year award for the entire league, just went through one of the most challenging games of his career. I know you must be thinking, what do you mean? PS2 had a bad game? Well, family, even the best have their moments, and what happened against the Colts was something nobody expected to see. 7 receptions allowed in a single game. That's right, you heard it correctly. But hold on, because our elite cornerback's reaction will surprise you. And what he said after this game shows exactly why this guy is different. Stay with me, and you'll understand everything that went down in this crazy situation. Look, folks, let's start by setting the scene here. We're talking about Pat Surtain, too, a player who literally makes opposing teams avoid throwing to his side. Normally, when he's on the field, quarterbacks prefer not to even try because they know it's practically impossible to complete passes in his coverage. Last season, among all cornerbacks who played at least 400 coverage snaps, PS2 had the lowest target rate in the entire league, just 10.9%. That means he was so dominant that opponents simply didn't test him. And when they did, well, he allowed only 35 receptions for 306 yards the entire season. But then came the game against the Colts, and something completely different happened. Daniel Jones, Indianapolis's quarterback, decided he was going to test our all-pro cornerback all game long, and he managed to complete 7 passes in PS2's coverage in a painful 29-28 loss. Can you imagine Broncos country seeing Pat Surtain running after receivers and allowing run after reception? Because that's exactly what happened. A scene we Broncos fans aren't used to seeing. But here comes the part that shows our player's character. Instead of making excuses or blaming other things, PS2 took full responsibility. He said he considers himself to have too high a standard to have the games like that, and that it wasn't one of his best performances. And here's what's interesting. This was the game with the most receptions allowed by Surtain since October 2022, when he also allowed 7 receptions against Las Vegas. Before that, the last time was in 2021 against the Baltimore Ravens. Notice the pattern? All were in Broncos losses. Now, let's analyze what really happened on the field. Daniel Jones made some really precise throws, and PS2 himself acknowledged this. He said some of the passes were insane. They were so well executed. But the cornerback was also honest in admitting that his technique was kind of lazy at some moments, and there's more. The guy suffered an ankle injury early in the game and still kept playing. But he doesn't even use that as an excuse. This elite mentality is exactly what separates good players from exceptional players. Sean Payton, our head coach, gave an interesting perspective on the situation. He doesn't believe the Colts were specifically targeting PS2, but that it was more a matter of natural progression of plays. Even so, he recognized it was an atypical game for our star cornerback. Now comes the part that impresses me most about this whole situation. Pat Surtain, too,'s reaction after this game shows exactly why he's a differentiated player. Instead of getting down or being dramatic, he saw this as a huge learning opportunity. The guy said this gave him a lot of motivation, that now he wants to make sure he'll be in the right spot at the right time on every play. He's going to study film, work on mechanics in practice, and correct the details he identified as problematic. And you know what else catches my attention? His family background. PS2's father, Patrick Surtain, was also an NFL cornerback for 11 seasons. He played for Miami and then Kansas City. Pat Surtain, too, himself commented that his father perfectly understands these situations because it's part of a defensive back's life. Folks, if you're true Broncos country and want to stay on top of all the analysis, news, and reactions from our team, subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notification bells because whenever something important happens with the Broncos, you'll be the first to know. Don't miss any play from our family. Look, family, I'm going to tell you something. This type of situation is exactly what defines a true champion. Any player can be good when everything's going right. But what separates the great ones from the mediocre ones is precisely how they react when things don't go as planned. And Pat Surtain, too, is showing exactly why he won the Defensive Player of the Year award. The mentality, the way he's facing this adversity, that's world champion mentality right there. You remember that last year he signed a 4-year contract extension worth $96 million, with $77.5 million guaranteed. That's the kind of investment you make in a player you know will respond in difficult moments. Now, tactically analyzing what happened, Daniel Jones really made some exceptional throws. But the most important thing is that our cornerback has already identified exactly where he needs to improve: positioning, footwork, and route reading. And there's another interesting detail. He's going to talk with J.K. Dobbins, our running back who played for the Chargers last season, to get inside information about the next opponent. This shows he's not just focused on correcting mistakes, but also on preparing better for upcoming challenges. Tell me, Broncos country, don't you think this mentality of always seeking to improve, even while being the best at the position, is exactly what we need from all players on our team? Because look, we're talking about a guy who last season had the lowest target rate among all qualified cornerbacks in the league. Teams literally avoided attacking his side because they knew it was practically impossible to succeed. And even so, after a bad game, he wants to improve even more. That's elite mindset, folks. That's champion mentality. And that's exactly why we in the Denver Broncos family can be sure our cornerback will come back even stronger. Now, let's talk about the bigger context of the season. The Broncos are 1-1, and the next challenge will be against the Chargers, who are undefeated at Tulane. Justin Herbert will be the opposing quarterback. And you know he has a powerful arm. But I'm absolutely certain that Pat Surtain, too, will use this negative experience against the Colts as extra fuel to dominate against the Chargers. That's the type of player he is. The greater the pressure, the better he plays. And there's another important aspect here: the confidence Sean Payton has in our cornerback. The coach said he has total confidence in PS2 and that he'll recover perfectly from this bad game. This mutual confidence between player and coach is fundamental for any team's success. Did you notice that even with a game below his standard, Pat Surtain too didn't lose his humility? He acknowledged that opponents also get paid to play well, that they made excellent plays, but at the same time didn't hang his head. He maintained confidence that his coverage was tight on most plays. That's the mentality I want to see in all Broncos players. Recognize when you don't play well, but without losing confidence. Learn from mistakes, but without letting it affect future performance. And the coolest thing about all this is that PS2 has already shown throughout his career that he knows how to recover from bad games. The 2 other times he allowed 7 receptions in a game were in 2021 and 2022, and after those games, he always came back playing at a high level. Now, let's technically analyze what happened in that game against the Colts. Pat Surtain, too, specifically mentioned that his technique was lazy at some moments. For those who don't understand much about football, this means he wasn't perfectly executing the basic fundamentals of the position. At the cornerback position, every detail makes a difference: foot positioning, timing to turn and run with the receiver, hand technique to contest the ball. Everything needs to be perfect. And when an elite player like PS2 says he was lazy, it means he knows exactly where he made mistakes. Footwork is especially crucial for a cornerback. If you don't have the correct footwork, you'll always arrive a step late in coverage. And in the NFL, that one step difference means the difference between a successful defense and a completed reception. PS2 also mentioned he needs to improve route reading. This is interesting because it shows he wants to better anticipate what receivers are going to do. When you can read the route before the receiver even completes the movement, you gain a huge advantage in coverage. And there's another important tactical aspect. Daniel Jones made some really exceptional throws. This shows that sometimes, even when you do everything right on defense, the offense can execute perfect plays. It's part of the game. This situation with Pat Surtain, too, has a much bigger impact than just an individual game. We're talking about our best defensive player, the guy who's the anchor of our secondary. When he plays well, the entire defense gets stronger. But the most important thing is the message this reaction sends to the rest of the team. When your best player takes responsibility for mistakes and uses it as motivation to improve. It creates a culture of excellence throughout the locker room. Other players see that not even the Defensive Player of the Year is satisfied with below-standard performances, and this raises the level of accountability for everyone. That's how championship teams are built. So, family, I'm absolutely certain we're going to see an even more motivated and focused Pat Surtain, too, in the upcoming games. This adversity will be the fuel he needs to remind the entire league why he's the best cornerback in football. Now, looking at the next game against the Chargers, this situation could be a huge advantage for us. Justin Herbert will probably try to test our elite cornerback, thinking he might be psychologically shaken. But anyone who knows PS2 knows this will only motivate him more. And did you see that he's already preparing intelligently? He's going to talk with J.K. Dobbins to get information about the Chargers' offense. This shows he's not just focused on correcting errors, but also on tactically preparing for the next challenge. This professional mentality is exactly what we need to see from all players in our Denver Broncos family. It doesn't matter if you're a star or a backup, you always have to look for ways to improve and help the team win. Folks, I want you to stop for a moment and think about what this situation really represents. We're seeing one of the best players in the entire league in action, not just on the field, but mainly in how he deals with adversity. Anyone can be positive when everything's going right. But the real test of character is how you react when things don't go as planned. And Pat Surtain was giving a masterclass on how an elite professional should behave. He didn't make excuses, didn't blame other players, didn't complain about referees or game conditions. He took full responsibility, coldly analyzed where he can improve, and transformed a negative experience into extra motivation. That's world champion mentality, family. It's exactly this type of attitude that differentiates teams that only show up in the regular season from teams that win Super Bowls. And here's another detail I think is fundamental. Even while recognizing he played below his standard, he didn't lose confidence. He said his coverage was tight on most plays and gave credit to opponents for well-executed plays. This is the balanced mentality you need to have in football. Recognize mistakes without destroying yourself psychologically, and give credit to the opponent without losing confidence in your own abilities. Tell me, Broncos country, don't you think we can all learn something from PS2's reaction? Not just in sports, but in life in general? I have a prediction for you. In the upcoming games, we're going to see Pat Surtain, too, playing at an even higher level than before. This adversity will be the fuel he needs to remind everyone why he's considered the best cornerback in the NFL. And you know what else? This situation might even be positive for the playoffs. Better to go through an experience like this in the regular season than when it really matters in the postseason. Now he knows how to handle this type of situation and will be even more prepared for crucial moments. So, there you have it. Denver Broncos family, what did you think of this complete analysis of our cornerback Pat Surtain 2's situation? Look what we learned today. Even the best players in the league go through adversities, but what really matters is how they react to these situations. And our PS2 is giving a true lesson in professionalism and champion mentality. He took full responsibility for the mistakes, identified exactly where he needs to improve, and is using this experience as extra motivation for upcoming challenges. That's exactly the type of leadership we need on our team, and you can be sure of one thing. When the playoffs arrive, our elite cornerback will be even more prepared and motivated for having gone through this experience during the regular season. Now, I want to know your opinion. Comment below. Do you think this adversity will make Pat Surtain 2 even stronger? How do you evaluate his reaction to this situation? And for the veteran Broncos country fans, do you remember other times our players used adversities as motivation for historic plays? Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the analysis, share it with all your Denver Broncos family friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any news about our team. And as always, go Broncos! Until next time, Broncos country, stay strong and always support our Denver Broncos family.